What was the stupidest reply to a serious question that you've ever heard? I was a nanny when I was in college for this very bizarre family who always pretended like I wasn't there. I was walking down the street with the mother and her 2 kids. It was February and the sun glare was really bad, so naturally I was wearing sunglasses. One of the kids, about 4, asked his mother why I was wearing sunglasses in winter, and the mother responds, "Well, some people are not that smart and they just want to look cool." Please note, both parents were professors at an Ivy League college. My friend was a second-year medical student and she was walking through the main floor of our hospital in scrubs. She was stopped by a passerby asking for directions and she was asked, "Hey, where's PETCT?" She said, I think there's one in the nearby mall." The man looked at her confused and was like, "The PETCT is in the mall?" And she replies, "Yeah, like the 2nd floor, I think. It's not called Pet City though, it's called Pet World, I think. Do you think I'm looking for the pet store?" 2 years of medical education and common sense returned to her in that moment and said, "Oh my god, you mean the scan? No, it's down that hall on the right. I'm so sorry." He shook his head, walking away, and we heard him say, "I wish I was looking for a frickin' pet store." Was in college and went to the calculus study hall to see if I could learn something. One of the problems was something like, a man throws a ball on the moon at a speed of X miles per hour at an angle of Y degrees. How long before the ball comes down? The response from the teacher's assistant, who was a PhD candidate in math, "That's a stupid question. Everyone knows there's no gravity on the moon." I never went back. I'm an astronomer. Before we were married, my soon-to-be wife asked me, "How can there be dust on the moon when there's no gravity?" I asked her in genuine curiosity what made her think there was no gravity on the moon. She closed her eyes and went, "Oh, duh." She keeps bringing it up years afterwards despite my continued reassurance that there are no dumb questions. But she doesn't believe me. I love that woman. I actually kind of love that last one because even if it shows some basic ignorance or a preconceived notion, it does display enough knowledge or logical capacity to be able to work through and correct yourself. Now, if only more people could admit they were wrong and react to criticism that way instead of knee-jerk reactions. Me, when I was writing a construction bid, "Is the standard flooring on these units going to be tile or vinyl?" The client said, "Yellow." My high school had a geography bee where one kid was asked what the capital of France was, and he replied, "Spain." In my high school physics class, the teacher asked what was the unit for time. This girl screamed, "Kilograms." After that, you could see the teacher lost hope on all of us. Back in India, my company had hired a motivational speaker to give a speech at an event. There were 300-odd people, with senior people of HR also in the audience. Everyone was bored, but the lady instructor kept on going on how to build self-confidence. Sensing that people weren't interested, she started getting the audience involved. I, being a backbencher as always, did not care about it at all. I thought she'd stay in the front. I was feeling sleepy and not paying attention to it. After some time, I saw her coming to the back. She suddenly stopped next to me and asked, "Are you motivated?" I wasn't sure what was going on, and I answered, "No, I'm Dave." Half the crowd started laughing. She was taken aback by my answer and didn't know how to respond to this. She didn't come to the back to ask questions after that. When accused of nepotism after giving his son an important role as a politician, Brazil's president said, "He has to be someone's son, why can't it be mine?" Truly an argument you can't fight back. It was actually me who said the dumb reply. This was when I was younger, by the way. And yeah, I realize that everything is when I was younger. Specifically, this happened about 2 years ago. And yes, I'm still a socially awkward idiot, I was just more of one back then. I was texted by a friend saying, "Can I take a rain check?" A few minutes later, I texted back, "Nope, no rain." I had literally checked the weather for the day. I was a socially awkward idiot, so yeah. In physics, there's something called the right-hand rule, which helps you find the direction of force given the direction of the magnetic and electric fields. It's a little hard to explain how exactly, but you literally use your right hand as a model. My professor asked me in front of the class what the first thing you needed to identify in order to use the rule was. I panicked and answered, "Your right hand?" In law school, we had a free clinic for qualifying and lower-income people to come in. We couldn't technically advise them because we weren't barred yet, but we could guide and try to help them through some complex issues they might not have a handle on. One guy came in and wasn't even my case, but being done by a classmate next to me during a session. The man, dead-faced and scared, said, "Would filing for bankruptcy ruin my life?" The girl, flustered on how to answer, said, well, it looks like your life is already pretty bad." We were discussing about Antarctica, and some guy casually said, stone-cold face, "You don't actually believe Antarctica is a real place, right?" Full disclosure, I was the idiot in this conversation, but in my early 20s. I was at a friend's small gathering, and I was chatting with my friend and some guy I'd never met before. Asked where he grew up, he said, "DC," to which I replied, "Oh, I didn't realize people actually lived there." I knew it was stupid as soon as it was coming out of my mouth, but I also kind of thought it was a district, like the financial district, and people went there for work, but lived just outside of it. Worst part was that even though I was fresh out of college, I was working in a local political office, and these were folks from state legislative offices, so I should have known better. They laughed at me for a while. At work, a customer asked one of our chefs where the fish comes from. He pointed to the kitchen and said, "It just kinda comes through that door." This guy is the kind of guy who wouldn't think to make a joke like that. He has an absolute heart of gold, but unfortunately, he is actually that thick. I once got asked by him if a pot of obviously boiling water was hot and had to stop him from just dipping his hand in there when my sarcastic answer was to dip his finger in and check. That is fricking adorable, if a little sad. Just a big old dopey sheepdog of a man. And this guy who's apparently ready to jam his hand into scalding liquid is a chef? Does he still have all of his fingers? Because if he does, that's a frickin' miracle. I got a former friend a job at my workplace. She was seriously stressing, talking about how if she doesn't find a job, her ex might win the custody case and take the kids, and she wasn't finding anything. So I talked to my boss and got her a position doing what I do. 1 week later, she was supposed to go on her first call. She overslept by 4 hours and ended up missing the job. I called her as I was leaving to do the job she missed, and I asked, "So, are you going to talk to our boss and see if he'll give you another chance?" And she straight up went, "Oh, I don't think so." "Oh well, wasn't meant to be." Girl, what? As a side note, I work in the funeral business. The job was taking a body down to get an autopsy. The place where this particular person was getting one was over 2 hours away. We're supposed to be there at a certain time, otherwise we spend all day there. This girl and I are no longer friends. Stupidly of me, the job wasn't what led me to sever ties. Along with not working, this girl had constant car troubles. At the time of the job, she had a working vehicle. I let her use my car because I'd bought a new one and planned to sell the old one. We worked out a deal where she'd babysit my 4-year-old in exchange for using my car to get her kids back and forth to school. A month into that, she couldn't babysit for me anymore and wasn't paying me to use my car. I repeatedly asked for my car back over the span of 3 months, and she'd give me some kind of excuse every time. I ended up having to go over to her apartment, demand my keys, and then go back to get my car later. Last I heard, she still has her kids, and was recently let go from a fast food restaurant for missing too many shifts. I was on a job and we needed to have a structural engineer come in and look at one of the floors to make sure it was stable enough. So we asked the owner's daughter if she had a contact number for the structural engineer her dad normally dealt with when having his buildings renovated. She was supposedly a business major who was going to take over her dad's company. She looks at the three of us, me, my assistant, superintendent, and the project manager, and says, "Oh, yeah, but he's busy working on my car at the moment." All three of us were just like, "What?" "Yeah, he's working on my engine in my car. Why do you guys need him? Engineers work on engines, not buildings." What the frick? Traveling in a car down a street looking for a particular shop. "So, which shop is it?" "The one by the tree." The road was lined with trees. In school, a physics teacher had asked one of my fellow students, who was holding a presentation on nuclear energy, "What is the Hadron Collider in Switzerland used for?" The response was so outrageously stupid, I was dumbfounded and cannot believe this happened to this day. She also wasn't joking. Nobody jokes with this teacher because no one had ever seen him laugh and he was a D-bag. My friend confidently said, "To create a second son." A doctor once asked my mum, "Are you vaccinating your 1-year-old son according to the chart I gave you?" The mum said, "Better than that, I'm breastfeeding him." This was in India last year. Didn't know this was happening in India too. In high school world history class, The teacher says, "Alright everyone, we'll be covering the Reformation period. Who knows why Martin Luther was significant?" A student blurts out, without raising a hand, "Martin Luther? Isn't that the guy who freed all the slaves?" This one holds a special place for me because it's multiple layers of wrong. Oh boy. You can see how he got there, which makes his wrongness all the more hilarious. Same name, bar a couple of syllables at the end. Black guy, equal rights, freed slaves? ? Stand up with a completely unearned air of competence and shout bingo. At the start of 2020, a volcano erupted in Batangas, a province in the Philippines. It affected my hometown, which frickin' sucked. What does our president suggest doing against the eruption? Give supplies? Help in the evacuation of the people stuck there? Provide relief and support? No. You want to know the answer? His words, not mine. I will urinate on the volcano. Good job, President. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not so much a question, but my partner's dad is a doctor and is also from India originally. Also, he's lived in the UK since the 80s. A patient asked if he was worried about Brexit, and he said no, he's from India. It won't really affect him any more than it did before since India is in Asia. In absolute seriousness, the patient replies, "No, India must be in Europe. Asia is where China and Japan are." Hope this story fits here. I helped a friend, Bob, get hired working in the back room of a retail store. I was good friends with the manager, Tim, and I'd periodically check in to see how Bob was doing. I was a manager as well at the time at a different location. Tim was very pleased with Bob's work ethic and productivity. I talked to Bob and he said he was enjoying the job. After about 5 or 6 months, I got a call from Tim asking if I've talked to Bob recently. I replied no and asked if everything is okay. Tim informed me that Bob has been a no-call, no-show for about a week and he was worried about him. I immediately called Bob to see what was going on. Bob informs me that he decided to quit the job. In utter dismay and confusion, I shout, "What? Why? I vouched for you. Why would you do that without at least giving me a heads up?" He replied, "Man, every time someone new gets hired, they put them with me to train them, and that's not my job." Technically, he was right, it wasn't his job to train new hires, but what Bob didn't know is that managers did things like this to groom the associate into becoming a supervisor, gradually giving them more responsibilities over time. They did the same thing with me when I was coming up the ranks. He would have known this if he had called me before he decided to quit. Once I explained, I could hear the wires connecting in his brain. He apologized and asked if he could get his job back. I told him probably not since he left the way he did. Just because it's not your job now doesn't mean it won't be your job in the future. I saw a video of a guy asking people, "What's the hardest thing you've had to say in your life?" And most people replied with sad things, like telling their kids that their dog had passed away, they've had to divorce, relative passed, among other things. But one guy comes in and says it was the time he had to say Worcester sauce. Sure, it was funny because he kept saying it wrong since it was the hardest thing for him to say, but it was such a dumb answer. It's still pretty frickin' funny though. I used to work in a video rental store that has since closed down. First week I worked there, a person asked, in store mind you, if we rented out movies. I didn't know what to do other than just stone-faced say, "Yes, of course we do." I wasn't sure if they were serious or not. I asked my ex-boss, an alcoholic piece of crap, if he knew how to do this thing on the system and could show me. He replied with, "Yes," and just went home. Just frickin' took off. I heard a lady ask at a Chinese takeout restaurant, "Is the orange chicken pork? The best part?" She was dead serious. One time, my friends and I were hanging out in his apartment. All of a sudden, I hear a whoosh and look over at my friend, and his hair is on fire. We got it out quickly, and I asked him what the heck just happened. He told me, "I was trying to listen to the sound the lighter made when I flicked it." I asked, "What's a street name that starts with N?" They answered, "Notorious B.I.G." Overheard in 11th grade English class, "What the frick is a syllable?" Works in IT, during a meeting at work. The project manager asks, "Okay, so how should we name this tension?" There was silence. A random guy in the back then shouts, "Susan!" A middle school music teacher asks the class why it's called a quarter note. One kid quite seriously replied, "Because they're worth 25 cents each." 5 years ago, I asked my now girlfriend on a date. Stupidly, she said yes. Now she's stuck with me. Astronomer here, maybe not quite the original post I had in mind, but it is depressing how many people will ask me a serious question about, say, black holes, hear the explanation and then dismiss it with a, yeah, but I don't believe in relativity, or whatever theory they dislike. Like, okay, I guess you can believe in whatever you want, but the universe isn't going to conform to that in how it works. And it goes without saying that these people have very rarely taken an actual physics class and understand what they're dismissing. They've just read some articles online and think they're now experts. I'm a high school teacher and I heard this one once. What's Sudoku? Deadpan, serious, and very condescending. It's the highest form of when a Japanese ritually ends their life. How many is a Brazilian? Question. Name something that starts with the word pork. Kipine. I'm sorry, I thought this was a forum for submitting stupid answers, not the most brilliant fricking thing that I've ever heard in my life. This kid's gonna be a literary genius or at the very least make a half-decent class clown. Not sure which. When I was a senior in high school, I was in National Honor Society and I used to be the lab assistant for Chemistry A and help grade tests. We were going over elements and compounds and the directions asked the student to clarify if the subject was an element or a compound. The teacher threw in pizza as a gimme question, and this guy literally wrote element as his answer. Even worse, he was irate when we marked it incorrect. He was the only one in all 3 classes to get that question wrong. I worked at a place that served coffee and ice cream. I asked a customer what she wanted to order, and she replied with, "Are your milkshakes cold?" A teacher in high school asked the class if anyone knew how many feet there were in a mile. Very seriously, a student answered, "Nobody knows that. It's impossible. Everyone has different-sized feet." While watching Frozen with a group of friends, my brother's girlfriend, 30 minutes in, looks confused and upset and looks me in the eyes and asks, "If their parents died, are they still sisters?" She had been thinking about it for 30 minutes. I had to console her and let her know that if her parents died, her sister would still be her sister. My teacher asked my friend during English class, "What's the prefix of sub?" He responded with way. We still give him crap for that. At our 9th grade science fair, 9th grade is the last year before graduation from school, in Denmark, I don't know how it is in the States, our last science exam went like this. My friend and I were teammates and we had it going pretty good. So, my teacher asked how wind was created, and my friend replied, "The tree's muscles make them swing from side to side, pushing air around, thus creating wind." What time is it? Not yet. It was biology, and the teacher called this guy, I'll call him Tim, to the board to answer a couple of questions for a grade. I'll skip straight to the point. She asked him how did a horse adapt to his living conditions. He answered with a long nose, strong legs, wings, and claws. I don't know if he was thinking about a griffin or a pegasus, but it was pretty funny. That's a pretty fair price if you look at the prices of trains, when trying to buy a used car. A kid got asked what 2 plus 2 was. He thought for a second and said 7 or 5. This was in 6th grade. I swear to God his age was higher than his IQ. I don't know if this counts because it's more of a dumb question. At work one day I was given a gift from a coworker. It was a bracelet with silver beads. The beads signified the dots and dashes for Morse code. In Morse code, the bracelet design spelled out, "Frick you." Another girl that we worked with asked me with a straight face, "Morse code is the same thing as sign language, right?" Another coworker who wasn't exactly bright chimed in and said, "Yes, it's the exact same thing with the hand signals." And I had to leave the room. From a beauty pageant, sadly I haven't been able to find a clip. What are your opinions on affirmative action? Well, I believe we should be affirmative in all our actions. To be fair, that's a question that's unfair to ask of smart people. That's just how it's always been. If you're traveling 80 miles per hour, how long does it take you to go 80 miles? Well, if I run the mile in about 9 minutes… Well, it was me who answered, but… Tell me now, how are we going to transport an entire freaking TV that is way bigger than we two combined downstairs without killing ourselves? Said my brother back when he was 17 and I was 12. To this day, I have no idea why our parents trusted us enough to move the TV downstairs, But then my 12-year-old self answered in a completely serious voice, fast and ably. I almost got pushed down the stairs for that. When Steven Gerrard, an English footballer, was asked his favourite type of cheese, he replied, melted. At school, I once asked a group, isn't it weird how we always eat chicken eggs but you never see turkey eggs? Why is that? A girl looked at me like I was a complete moron and replied in a very condescending tone, turkeys are male chickens, so… Back in the day when fax machines were the pinnacle of office technology, I had a co-worker who was standing next to the fax looking distressed. I asked them what the problem was, and they responded that they couldn't make a copy of the document because the copier was broken. I said, why do you need to make a copy? And they replied, if this is faxed, then I won't have a copy. It'll get transferred through the fax. They actually thought the fax machine was like a transporter in Star Trek. Many years ago, I told a lady I was going to send her a Cat5 cable to connect her computer to her home firewall. She said that was unacceptable because her dogs didn't get along with cats. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.